Hey people, it's your boy Olino, and I'm coming at you with a quick Hearts of Iron 4 tutorial. This is to help you out when your friends are like, hey, play this new game we got, and you have no idea what you're doing because it's kind of complicated. You never played the game before. So I'm just going to show you a real quick, dirty way to sort of hopefully get you running in Hearts of Iron 4. So let's just jump right in. You can see the current game version right here. The game version's always changing, and I currently have all the DLC that are currently installed, just so you know. If you're playing with friends in multiplayer, if the host has all of the downloadable content, then you will have all the DLC and all the expansions available when you're playing multiplayer. So let's just get into it. We're going to select single player, new game, January 1st, 1936. Almost everybody plays at the start date. If your friends are playing on this start date, there might be something wrong with them. Alright, we're just going to select other countries. We're not going to focus on playing as a major power. We're going to play as Iran today. The reason for playing as Iran is simply that they have the default focus tree, meaning they don't have a whole lot of special mechanics or anything we really need to worry about. So the things you learn here should be generally applicable to any other country in terms of like the raw mechanics, but some specifics, some specific countries have specific mechanics that honestly you just have to play the country to figure that out. Difficulty, we're just going to play on regular. That's the regular way to play. If you want to, you can play on lower difficulties. Nothing wrong with that. We're not gonna play in Iron Man mode. We don't really care about achievements for this run, and we're gonna play with historical AI focuses because we don't want anything wacky happening, and we're not gonna mess with the custom game rules at all. If we click into this, you can see that you can strengthen countries, change certain game rules, which you probably have no idea about. Just leave all this stuff to default and don't mess with it at all. Well, let's get into it. Alright, so there are a couple of things we gotta do first. In Hearts of Iron 4, you have these alerts come up, and these alerts are meant to bring your attention to things you need to do. So first thing, really common, select a national focus. The national focus is basically a goal, objective, something that your country is basically directing its political will to try and accomplish. And that could do all sorts of things. You can try and pursue an industrial effort and get some factories, and you can see the effects of it, build up your navy, improve your army, change your ideology. As I mentioned, Iran has a default focus tree, so a lot of countries that don't have special content, they all share this. You can view another nation's focus tree by just doing a quick little right click and on the country, bring up the diplomacy tab. You can also click into that tab right there, and you can click into them and you can see that Iraq has the exact same focus tree as us. Whereas a different country like, say, France, they have, a special focus tree. It's much bigger and everything. But we're not going to worry about that. So let's focus on what we're doing as Iran. So first things first, the Iranian industry is not great. We only have 5 factories. So it'd be really nice to get more factories. So we're going to go, but first, we would actually like to do some war because Hearts of Iron 4 is a war game. So we're going to go ahead and get started on flipping ideology. Politically, we start as non-aligned. There are 4 different ideologies in vanilla Hearts of Iron 4. That's without mods. Democracy, communist, fascist, and non-aligned. The non-aligned and democracies have a lot of restrictions on who they can declare war on, whereas communists and fascists can basically declare war on whoever they want. So for this game, we're just going to go ahead and try and flip to communism. So we're going to want to do political effort, collectivist ethos, and then sort of try and get some of these communist bonuses. So you'll see we're going to get political power. The political power is denoted by this number up here, and we want that political power so that we can then get a communist revolutionary who's going to give us daily communism support to increase the popularity of communism in our country, and then we'll be able to flip to the communist ideology, and then we can start declaring some wars. Next thing we're going to do, we've got some unassigned divisions. What we can do is we can shift left click this alert. This will select all our unassigned divisions. We have a whole 3 divisions. Divisions are the main unit of combat in Hearts of Iron 4. What we do is we've got them all selected. We can click down here. This creates an army out of those divisions. We click up here. We can assign a general. We've got this guy right here. He's our only general, so we can just assign him. Then what we're going to want to do is we can go ahead and click here, and now that army is these 3 divisions, which are part of this army group, which currently has 1 army. We currently don't have a field marshal, so we're not going to assign anybody. But we can work on getting a field marshal later. Let's get some civilian let's go ahead and build some factories. Right now, we have 1 military factory and 4 civilian factories. We'll get some military factories from our focuses. So let's just get a civilian factory right now. You can see modifiers. Higher infrastructure states get a bonus. So for example, if I build in this state, I'd get a 60% construction speed bonus for building a factory, whereas this state has lower infrastructure, so I only get a 20% bonus. So you want to try and build in the higher bonus areas. Alright, this next alert, research slots available. So if we go to the research tab, you can see we've got technologies to research. Right now, we could currently research 2 technologies at the same time. In general, I recommend going ahead and getting this electronic mechanical engineering. You want to get that so you can get radio, which helps your divisions reinforce in combat. That'll be really important. You'll see later, but in general, you really want to get radio early. So we'll go ahead and research that. And then we'll also go ahead and research this basic machine tools. That gives us production efficiency, which is going to make our military factories more efficient. So we're also going to do that. Also, man, that some of those audio effects are loud. Alright, next things. We've got some decisions available. You can see we've got a special thing here of recreating the Persian Empire. Who knows, maybe we'll get to do that. The rest of these are all just generic stuff that you can do whenever. We're not going to really worry about any of this stuff. If you're trying to flip ideology, these anti-rates can be helpful. So for example, say we were fascist and we wanted to flip to communist. We could do anti-fascist raids, which would reduce the popularity of fascism in our country, and would then help us flip to communist faster. Because we're non-aligned, there's no anti-non-aligned raids, so we can't really do anything on that front. But yeah, and then missing equipment production. Okay, we're missing fighters and close air support. So if we click on the air map mode down here, shortcut F3, we see we've got some planes here. Air wings want to reinforce to 100 of their type. So they're requesting fighter planes from our stockpile, and we don't have any, and we're not making any. So that's why we're getting that alert. We've got so few planes. What we're just going to do is we're just going to go ahead and just disband these air wings here. So we click disband air wings. We'll remove both air wings, return all its equipment into reserve. That's fine. You can also see we got some manpower back because we got air wings use up manpower, and so we got some manpower back when we disbanded those air wings. This, of course, being our recruitable population that we can actually deploy in the military. And if you highlight over this, you can see our total population that we get, our eligible core population, and how much of that we can actually recruit, which is based on our conscription law, and we might get some other modifiers. Most of our population are civilians. They can't and won't fight, so if we exhaust our recruitable manpower, we're going to be out of dudes, and we're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Also worth noting, right now we control all core territory. So core territory is basically territory that everybody living in it recognizes that, hey, we're part of Iran and we want to be part of Iran. Other countries you'll see, so for example, France. France controls Syria. The people living in Syria don't really want to be part of France, so they have they're not considered a core part of France. They're not considered an integral or quote-unquote rightful part of France. So basically, they'll resist, but France can build up compliance, or anybody controlling non-core territory can build up compliance to make the people more okay with their rule. But yeah, that's something we'll deal with. So that's why you can't just, conquer a whole bunch of territory and be like, oh man, this is so great. This is so awesome, guys. I'm going to have all this manpower, all these people that want to fight for me. It doesn't really work like that. So if we unpause, we should get rid of the missing equipment production. Unless we've got an air wing station somewhere else. No. There we go. It disappeared. So it took the day to roll over. Sometimes alerts and other things in HOI will roll over on the day. The smallest unit of time is the hour, and then there's the day, and then a couple other things can be based on weeks or months. So yeah, we're progressing through our national focus. When we're doing a national focus, it consumes political power. So you can see political effort, which is our national focus, is consuming 1 political power a day. Everybody by default gains 2 plus modifiers. So if you need political power, one of the things you can do is you can just not have a national focus selected, and that can help you out. But yeah, we're just going to focus on the stuff that's super relevant. So, okay, insufficient resources. This is because we don't have any steel. Our military factories are making guns, but they don't have steel. If we highlight over this, we can see what the lack of resources penalty is. So we're taking a 10% production efficiency hit because we don't have the steel. So you trade in lots of 8. So this -2, I think we would rather build. Oh, we actually have a bunch more military civilian factories available because we're exporting. If you didn't know, we can export quite a bit of oil. So what we can do actually is that then it's actually probably worth it for us to go and spend one of those factories to import from France. These dashes indicate that there's a land trade route available, a land connection trade route, so we don't need to use convoys. The convoys number is right up here. Basically, convoys are basically like your quote-unquote civilian ships that you use to, like, well, they're basically your transports. You use them to transport troops and transport goods and transport supply to keep your troops supplied. So in general, I prefer it's great to use land routes when you can, because then you don't have to worry about being blockaded. So we're just going to do that. Now we just unpause. You can click here to pause. You can change the game speed up here. You can also use plus minus space. In my experience, the space bar doesn't work for pausing in multiplayer. You have to use the pause key on your keyboard, and you can also use the pause key in single player. Or of course, you can always click up here to pause and unpause. Let's run speed 3. So now we've got available airplanes in reserve because we disbanded those air wings, so you can highlight over there and you can see the planes we have in reserve. We can also click here into logistics tab. We can see we've got a bunch of planes in stockpile. We've got a deficit of guns because our guys need guns. Alright, and then we've got no divisions and basic training. Basically, we've got a bunch of manpower, so the game's like, hey, we could be training some divisions, but we have no guns. So we're not going to train any divisions right now. Click here. You can click down here, click up here, select the general. We're going to go ahead and switch from these guys from our cavalry brigades to our infantry brigades. If you click here, you can see the template. See a bunch of dudes. You can see the commanding officer. We're going to switch that template over to our infantry brigade. Cavalry move a little bit faster than infantry, but they use more equipment, so we're just going to have them there. And we click here for the front line. These are the various orders we can give our troops. We click there for front line, and we can click on a border and create a front line with Iraq, and you'll see why that's important later. In the recruit and deploy tab, this is where we'd actually train divisions, and we can also edit and modify our templates. It costs army experience, so say we want to add artillery. If we had army experience, we could modify it. Adding artillery modifies our stats, gives us soft attack, but reduces our organization, increases our supply usage, stuff like that. And one of the things I like to do in the supply tab, set upgrades to low priority. This is basically if you're producing better equipment than your troops are currently using, will they replace their old equipment? I generally think that I would rather just make sure my troops all have equipment before I start taking away the old equipment and replacing with new equipment. And then I like to set supply trucks, operations, and garrisons to max priority. Usually these things don't use that much equipment, and it can be annoying if they run low on equipment, so it's nice to set them to high priority, but that's just me. And turn up the game speed more because we're not really doing anything, especially in early Hearts of Iron 4. A lot of times you set your factories, set your troops up, and then you're just waiting, especially as a non-aligned or democratic country where you can't really affect the politics of the world too much. So now we just run things up. Get some events here. These are just like general news updates. You can just click through those. You can read them if you want. It tells you a little bit about what's going on. They could sometimes be important. But in general, if you've got an event that only has one option, it's generally just an informative pop-up. But yeah. Yep, you can see we're slowly producing guns. Got the Rhineland remilitarize. Completed political effort, which gave us a bunch of political power, which means we can get this guy right here and get on our way to flip into communism. And we'll go ahead, we can do, we could do collectivist ethos, but it doesn't really gain us anything on account of it giving us reduced democracy support, and we have no democracy support in our country currently. If we were theoretically 100% democratic, well, if we had a lot of democratic, we can only select this if we're not democratic. If we had a lot of Democratic Party popularity, selecting this would cause our democracy support to decrease, which would then cause the other parties that don't have negative modifiers to then increase, because your total support has to add up to 100% always. So if democracy decreases, then and it's more than 0, then the other factions have to increase as well. But we won't worry about that for right now. We have to do this to get internationalism, and since we're not aligned, that would actually give us communism support, so never mind. We'll actually do collectivist ethos. What am I talking about? Still building on the factories, not going to build an intelligence agency. Intelligence agencies are nice because you can get operatives to do things like destabilize other countries or root out rebels within your country. For example, in like non-core territory, you could send spies to reduce the resistance in those states. So that'll be useful later, but right now we can't really afford to do that because that upgrading your intelligence agency consumes civilian factories, and we do not have a lot of civilian factories right now. See, also, once we get 150 political power again, we're going to want to switch to partial mobilization. Partial mobilization is an upgrade to our economy law. So you can see right now, we have to use 33% of our civilian factories for consumer, or 33% of our total factories. That's the number of civilian factories we need to use to produce consumer goods. So in general, you always want to try to get this number lower. And then we've got traded goods. And with traded goods, the issue we've got is we're importing that steel, so we're spending a civilian factory doing that. So if we want more civilian factories, so we can use those civilian factories to build more factories, so we can use those factories to build more factories, we want to reduce our consumer goods, and the way you do that is you can mobilize your economy. All right, now we're going to get internationalism focus, which is also going to give us some more communism support, in addition to the communist revolutionary we've got. So, and you can see that's ticking up right now. So we're getting a 0.1 change daily. That's a 0.1% change. And as the party gets super popular, you'll get that modifier will get reduced. Next thing for industry tech, I generally recommend going dispersed. Dispersed is really nice when for retaining production efficiency and keeping your factories efficient when you switch between producing different types of equipment. In general, I prefer dispersed industry, but you can go concentrated if you really want to. It's not a huge deal, but I recommend dispersed, just if you don't want to think about it. We're waiting for 150. You can see we've got some other, these highlights mean we could do other things like getting an infantry expert buff our infantry divisions, army regrouping, or you could get a chief of air force or something, but we really want that economy law. You can see now we only need 23% of our factories for consumer goods, which freed up another civilian factory to help build more civilian factories. Oh, yeah, so you can see when wars get declared. So we got the Spanish Civil War going on here between the Republicans and the Nationalists. But we can't really do anything. If you're a different country, like a fascist, like a Germany or an Italy, you can actually send volunteers, but you can see we're not allowed to send volunteers because we're not aligned. We need at least 30 divisions, and we need world tension to be 40%. So, pop up, got another national focus. We could do some of these and get some bonuses, but I think we want to start getting some more factories. So do industrial effort, that'll give us a bonus to industrial tech research, and then we can actually start getting some free civilian and free military factories, which will be nice. And so we've got divisions available, so we've got communism on the rise. So one of the things we could do is we could try and provoke a civil war with the communists, and then play as the communists to try to win that civil war, or you can just open up political discourse to peacefully flip. And that's what we're going to opt to do, and that costs political power. So we'll just click that. And then basically once the communist popularity is greater than 50%, we can spend 100 political power, and the communists will just hold a referendum. The communists will win because they're the majority of the country, and then we'll flip to being communists. Let's see here. We'll get some construction tech again. Help try and build up our industry faster. You can see our overall construction speed here, and then we can see any specific modifiers. So if we were still on our lower mobilization law, lower economy law of civilian economy, we would have a penalty here that would be showing up like a minus 30% penalty for construction speed, which is why we wanted to mobilize additionally. And you can actually see that here. If you click on this, you can see this gives us a 10% bonus to military factory construction speed. All right, so yeah, so you can see from the as you can see from the different economy laws, civilian economy, we get a pretty bad minus 30% malus to both civilian and military factory construction speeds. Early mobilization reduces that somewhat. Partial mobilization eliminates the civilian factory malus, and we get a bonus to military factory construction speed. So, you know, it's in addition to freeing up factories by reducing consumer goods, we're also getting rid of that construction speed malus, which is really, really nice. So, another reason you generally want to try and up your economy law as soon as possible. It's just really nice. Let's see here. We can probably going to want to build maybe one more civilian factory. And then we're probably going to want to start, and then we'll get more from construction effort, and then we'll start to, total from this, you can get 4 civilian factories from your construction efforts, and you get 3 free military factories, and then you can get 3 free dockyards if you have a coastal state. And then these infrastructure efforts give us some infrastructure, which, as I mentioned previously, infrastructure gives you buffs to researching. Infrastructure gives you buffs to researching. Infrastructure gives you buffs to construction. So what we've got here is we're going to do dispersed industry. What we did was we had a tech bonus because when we did industrial effort, we got a 100% research bonus, basically meaning we'd research something twice as fast. So we could have used that on improved machine tools to make our factories more efficient, our military factories more efficient, or we could have done that with dispersed industry, which would have let us, gives us more factories and more factory output and gives us production efficiency, retention, all that good stuff. And the reason I selected the dispersed industry is because this tech overall takes longer to research than improved machine tools. So this actually means the buff will save us more time on getting this tech unlocked. All right, and we'll just keep getting more civilian factories for right now. Class conflicts, and these are events you can get because we have the communist revolutionary and communism is growing in our country, and so yeah, we have increased in popularity of communism, but reduced stability. Stability being this number up here. Having stability above 50% gives you bonuses. Having stability below 50% gives you maluses. All right, and you can see also now that our party is more popular, our effects have been scaled down, so we're only getting 33% of these 0.1 gains now. So they're scaled down to 0.03. You can also see that because we're increasing, this is causing the non-aligned faction to decrease in popularity. Then once we hit 150, we can also change our government. Again, we'll go ahead and get a silent workhorse. That gives us political power gain. So now we're getting extra 0.3 political power a day, which then will make it quicker for us to accumulate the political power to get more of these unlocks. And again, these are the various political advisors. Depending on the country you play as, like, for example, if you're playing as, like, Germany or something, you're going to have, like, a bunch of advisors. But for a country like Iran or smaller countries, you generally just have these sort of advisors that don't that you can choose from. You know, fascist, demagogue, democratic reformer, and communist revolutionary. They all help you drift to be fascist, democratic, or communist. Elusive gentleman, I believe every country has an elusive gentleman. That's for intelligence agencies. You get an extra operative. Faster intelligence agency reduction. But you can just highlight over these, see what kind of bonuses you get, and whether or not you think they'd be good for your situation. we're going to go ahead and do infrastructure effort because we want to get this construction effort too, to try and get those civilian factories ASAP so we can build more factories. It's also important to try and make sure you keep enough civilian factories also, because recall, your civilian factories have to, some of your total factories need to be assigned as civilian factories making consumer goods. So what happens is you can get into a situation where you're like, oh man, I'm just going to build a bunch of military factories and it's going to be great. And then all of a sudden, you build so many military factories, all your civilian factories have to be used as consumer goods because consumer goods are based off of your total factories. And then all of a sudden you don't have any civilian factories, meaning you can't trade and you can't build and you can't repair. And that really, really sucks. So you really want to make sure you have enough civilian factories. We're going to go and get these improved machine tools for this production efficiency. Production efficiency cap. That's this bar right up here is production efficiency. So the actual output of the factory is multiplied by this production efficiency. So the bigger this bar is, and you can actually go above 100%, but the bar only shows 100%. The higher this goes, the more output you're actually getting out of your military factories. Regional Defense Council, so we got the anarchists decided to break away from the Republicans. We'll see how that goes. Once again, we have another research slot available, and we will go ahead, honestly, and go for tanks. We're going to get trucks. Trucks can be pretty useful for supply. In fact, I should actually check. Do we have trains research? We do not have trains research. Okay, so trucks and trains are important for supply logistics, so it's something that's important to keep in mind. Non-aggression pact, leaving open the prospect. So this is a Turkey-specific thing they can do. Enact non-aggression pact with Turkey. We get some political power, or now we could get war support. Honestly, as long as we just have the non-aggression pact with Turkey, I think we're fine. So we'll sign the pact of friendship, because the plan is we're going to try and go to war with Iraq. When you have a non-aggression pact, you can actually then later on, and we also want to justify a war goal, but because we're not aligned, we need world tension to be 50%. If we're communist, we don't have a world tension limit. But you can see now we have a non-aggression pact. We cannot justify a war goal on Turkey, even if we were communist. Now, we could cancel the non-aggression pact, but when you get a non-aggression pact, you have to typically wait a certain amount of time to break it. And that time is modified based on the number of divisions that are on the border. Now, it is worth noting, though, that there are certain things that you can do to bypass non-aggression pacts. For example, the Germans and the Soviets get a non-aggression pact, but then Germany gets a focus that lets them declare war on the Soviet Union and bypass their non-aggression pact. So that's just something to keep in mind. The non-aggression pacts may not save you. And then let's see. We will go ahead and we can go ahead and get... you can see for a lot of our designers, we don't have a whole lot of options. We can go ahead and get Captain of Industry and just get a little bit faster civilian construction speed. So you can see here our construction speed, we're not seeing that advisor, but if we highlight over the civilian factory, we can see that we are getting our advisor's bonus there. So that's important to keep in mind. You can have building-specific construction modifiers that don't show up in this overall global construction speed modifier. Alright, we got infrastructure effort completed. Now we can do construction effort. United Front formed. They're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Things are about to get spicy. We have this pop up. We got free civilian factories, meaning we can build stuff. And then, honestly, we could probably go ahead and start building some military factories. So, this state has high infrastructure, so we'll go ahead. Actually, this state has high infrastructure, and even though it has a border with the Caspian Sea, you actually can't build naval dockyards in it. So, something to keep in mind, you maybe don't want to build a bunch of military and civilian factories in your coastal states, even if they're high infrastructure, because those are the only states you can build naval dockyards. Each state can only support a certain number of buildings, so right now this state has 0 of 2 buildings, so that's why I can only queue up 2 buildings to be built there. And then if we highlight over this, you can see we're getting the 20% from our global modifiers, and then we're getting a 10% bonus from partial mobilization, which only affects military factories, and we are not getting our advisor's bonus, which only affects civilian factories. Yeah, and generally also, you can generally expect to be able to change your government whenever you get 100 or 150 political power. All these things like changing your trade laws, which determines how many resources we're exporting, and changing your conscription law, those all cost 150 political power, and then some of your advisors cost 100, or some of them might cost 50. Looks like all of ours cost 100, but sometimes these cost 50, sometimes they cost 200. These guys also have a political command power allocation requirement, so command power is the red telephone. You can get a total of 200 command power plus minus modifiers. And then what you do is with like at least your advisors, you allocate the command power, meaning that your maximum is reduced by the amount that's being allocated. We'll go ahead and up our conscription law because we're going to want more manpower. We could use more manpower, but we also maybe want to get some fighters, maybe some tanks. We can maybe get a... tanks usually largely require steel, so we could usually maybe get some tanks, actually. That should help us out. We don't really need to worry about too much about planes, I don't think, with Iraq, because I doubt they're going to... we're also going to need 100 political power to flip to communist once we're above 50% communist support. I don't think we'll need to worry, though, about contesting air superiority with Iraq. Alright, got our construction effort, so now we can get our military factories, which would be nice. Or we could do... Oh, do we want to get the political power quickly? I think we want the factories. It's generally nice to get military factories because you want to get military factories because they start with low production efficiency and then they slowly gain production efficiency up to your maximum, which is here, your production efficiency cap. Let's see, we got that tank bonus, so let's go ahead and research interwar tanks. So you can see, because of our designer, we can get a reliability bonus. Reliability is nice because all equipment has reliability, so we can see for our infantry their average equipment reliability. Basically, reliability determines how quickly you lose equipment when you experience things like attrition. So having high reliability is very nice, especially for something like tanks, because it turns out tanks are really expensive to build. Alright, we just got a military factory, so we've got a free military factory, so we could assign that to build more infantry equipment, or we could assign it to build maybe some artillery. Right now we're going to focus on infantry equipment, though. Again, you can see my overall production efficiency dropped because I assigned this new military factory, which has very low overall production efficiency. So we're going to assign that factory, and then that'll help get us more guns because we're actually going to want to start training more divisions. So we need to set a location to deploy these divisions to. We can see that they've got all the manpower and equipment they need, but they're going to take time to train. They by default train up to 100%, but you can forcibly deploy them once they hit, say, 20%. Now we're just waiting for more of our factories to come through. And our divisions to be trained, of course. We can actually maybe get another line of divisions going. I can actually go ahead and show. So these guys are at 50% trained. So if I forcibly deploy them now, and we have a unassigned division, we click on them, you can see they're 50% of the way towards being trained out of green. The experience levels are, if I recall right, they are green, trained, experienced, veterans, and elites. Green troops experience a minus 25% modifier in combat. Trained troops have no modifier from experience. Experience get plus 25%. Veterans get plus 50%. Elite get plus 75%. So those modifiers can add up. We'll go ahead and take this guy. If we right-click down here, he is now assigned to this general, and he's automatically going to go fill out that front line order. Since we're also going ahead and researching tank tech, we'll go ahead and research armor protection. And we also have a national focus. You can see that a national focus, you can store up to 10 days of political power. So when I click on this and I click armament effort, it'll go ahead and assign those 4 days that I saved up towards this focus. Something to keep in mind. Basically, once you go over those 10 days, you're basically quote-unquote losing time doing national focuses, which sometimes you want to do if you need the political power. Sometimes you only have one focus you can do and you want to hold off doing that focus. But in general, you usually want to try and have a focus selected, at least early on especially. All right, we have trucks now. Let's go ahead and we'll get a little bit of artillery being built. You can see we're going to take a minus 5% modifier from not having tungsten. That isn't too bad, so we're not going to sacrifice a factory for tungsten yet. But as that deficit gets bigger, the penalties become larger as well. We also have 100 political power, so we can go ahead and flip to communist. So you can see we no longer have the Shah in charge, and we're now the Iranian Communist Authority, and you'll notice that we can now justify a little bit of a war goal. Well, not quite. We need a little bit more political power. Yeah, and unfortunately, it used to be some of these modifiers would actually let you declare war faster, but it doesn't look like we have that, so we're going to be a little bottlenecked by the time it takes to actually justify our war goal. So we want to wait. We need 60, I believe. Conquer. We need 61. Okay. There we go. And these modifiers are affected by world tension. If world tension was like 100%, it would be a lot quicker to justify these wars, but that's okay. So we send the justification to Iraq, and that should slowly cause a little bit of world tension. But we're going to have to wait 305 days before we can actually declare war now. We have another factory, and now we can go ahead and build some trucks, get some trucks being built. And again, we're going to take a rubber malice. Because it's a different type of resource, we're taking the same minus 5% penalty. If this required tungsten instead, we would be taking a worse penalty because our tungsten deficit would be exacerbated. But again, we're only at -1, so that's not too bad. With that in mind, we'll get one more. Well, we're actually starting to get free military factories, so let's go ahead and just get a little bit more civilian factories because we're going to need to trade for stuff. Because we only have oil, essentially, as our resources. Events regarding justifying our war. Our troops, and we're not in any particular rush to get those troops out because we're not going to be at war for another 300 days, so we can sort of hold off on that. In general, also, I would recommend making sure you're on the default map mode. Hit F1. Make sure, and this is like the land map mode. You can see all the divisions and troops and everything. You've got other map modes, which are the Navy and Air and Operatives map modes. Generally, you want to be on the default map mode, though, unless you're specifically doing something relating to those other trees. We're going to go ahead and assign this one on infantry equipment, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to wait until armor protection finishes, and then we're actually going to want to research trains to help out our supply. Right now we don't need any trains, but once we start invading, we're going to want some trains to move supplies around. A lot of countries start with trains research, but Iran doesn't for whatever reason. Same thing with trucks. Like some countries have trucks researched at the start, other ones don't. Got more troops assigned to the front line. You can see these guys are fully trained. One of the things we could do is we could train our troops, which will generate us a little bit of army XP and help train these green troops up to trained. But we don't really need to worry about that. The troops will gain experience once they're in combat, so. And it costs equipment to train. They experience attrition, so we want to avoid that. All right, we're getting civilian trains. We'll also want to get support equipment. Support equipment's nice because it lets you get these support companies, and some of them are really nice. Like logistics companies reduce supply usage. Engineers let you get flame tanks, and they're also just generally useful, helping your troops dig in. So you've got tanks. We'll get into tanks later, maybe. I don't know if we'll actually have a chance to research tanks before we declare war on Iran. If we're also going to want to prep for war, we're also going to go ahead and nab this infantry expert because this guy is actually going to give our infantry, which our army is entirely infantry, a nice bonus. 10% attack and 15% defense is pretty nice. You can see our maximum command power drop from 200 to 180, and we can see how it's allocated. Now it does say the allocation, it gives the individual's name, which can be a little bit unintuitive because I didn't know this guy's name. I just knew he was an infantry expert, which is why I assigned him. All right, we can go ahead and now we're going to do our infrastructure effort and get some extra research slots because those extra research slots will be helpful in us doing research. Let's see, we'll just get even more infantry equipment, and that exacerbates our steel deficit pretty mightily. Important when you import, so as you can see, I'm getting factory from trade because I'm exporting. When you import from a country, you are basically sending them your civilian factories. So I'm sort of buffing France by importing from them. I'm giving them more civilian factories. When you're a minor country importing one or two things, and we're only talking one or two civilian factories, doesn't really matter all that much. For a bigger country, though, like, say, a Germany, who might be importing a lot of rubber or a lot of chromium or something, that can be a significant buff to a country, and it's something to keep in mind. Especially when you're playing multiplayer. The anarchists looks like they got wiped out, and the Republicans aren't doing so hot. When you're doing multiplayer especially, you can import from your friends who are in the game, and that will actually give them more civilian factories, which can be really helpful. And then they can import from you to give you civilian factories in exchange for your resources. So that can be really nice. Yeah, you can see because we're increasing our number of military factories, the number of consumer goods factories we need has increased. So we now have a lot, and of course we're trading, so we have fewer civilian factories available. So we need to increase that. We'll go ahead and get mechanical computing, give us a research speed bonus. You can see our overall research speed bonus up here, and then we can see specific research bonuses we got. For example, our designer, our tank designer here is giving us a 15% specific armor research speed in addition to our overall 8% research speed bonus. And that research speed bonus lets you research things quicker. Speaking of researching quicker, extra research slot. Grab this. Okay, so once you've created a front line with a country, we can actually click the offensive line. And if we hold right mouse click, well, if you just right mouse click, you'll create a single offensive line, and your troops try and advance to that. But what we want to do is we want to try and right click and hold, and click and drag, and that creates a more broader offensive line. Alright, we've got some political power again. We'll go ahead and go up to limited conscription so that we'll have more manpower available just in case. We've got trains available now, so now what we can do is we'll create a civilian train production line, and we'll go ahead and take one of our... military factories get assigned in order of the production queue. So by moving the civilian train to the top, then when I take this guy off, the factory goes to that. If I had, say, the civilian trains were at the bottom, and I had the grayed out factories here for infantry equipment, the factory would be assigned to making infantry equipment before it was assigned to making the train. Yep. Alright, so now we've researched support equipment, and we can start researching other trains. We'll go ahead and just research some buffs to our regular infantry because we're going to have a mostly infantry army for fighting this war. And we've got a good amount of infantry equipment in reserve, so I'm going to go ahead and just deploy those guys, and we can start queuing up even more troops to be built. You can also change how many troops, so I've got this on infinity right now. We can click plus to lock in, so only 1 or 2 troops are built. We'll just have it set at infinity and just have it keep pumping out troops. We still have another 100 days, well, 90 days, until the war begins. Which, if we haven't, do we have any idea on the overall numbers? They've got 3 to 9 divisions, and we've got 10 divisions currently, so we'll see how things go. And of course, we've got our divisions in production. A big thing is to make sure you have enough divisions to just entirely cover your front line. Otherwise, the enemy, like for example, if he doesn't move a division in here, we can just send this dude to walk in and take that province. And then provinces are a smaller subdivision. So overall, if you click the overall area highlighted as a state, this is what has building slots and everything that the factories are in, and then it's made up of individual provinces. Control of the state is generally determined by who controls most of the victory points in the state. So, for example, I could lose all of these mountainous provinces, but as long as I control, like, these 3 cities here, I should be the one getting, like, the factories and resources from the state. See, we can't get another extra research slot because we don't have more than 50 factories. We can go ahead and do a naval effort, though, to get some dockyards. Although that is going to increase our overall number of factories, so we will need to use more civilian factories for consumers' goods. But it'd be nice to actually have a little bit of a navy. We'll go ahead and get some construction going. All right, we'll go ahead and get an army offense. Division attack overall is really nice, and I'll show you why once the war begins. Organization's also not bad, but offense in general I find to be really good. And that also, the Chief of Army, we're also going to get some army experience over time, which is going to be nice. Alright, so we've got more unassigned divisions. And you can see, so this number down at the bottom out of 24, the generals by default can efficiently lead 24 divisions. So we want to reduce speed because we're about to be at war. So you want to try and usually assign 24 divisions to a general. They do have the ability to earn a trait called Skilled Staffer, which increases their number from 24 to 30. So sometimes you'll see people, they'll assign 30 divisions, which I think confers about a minus 25% penalty to the general, to the bonuses the general confers to the troops. Which the bonuses are what you can see. They're based on the general skill, and they give attack, defense, supply consumption, which is based on these individual traits: attack, defense, supply consumption, all that stuff. Sometimes you'll see people assign 30 troops with the expectation that they will just earn the experience to unlock Skilled Staffer over time. All right, so we have the war goal. If we highlight over this, we can see when it expires. So we only have until October. So we'll just wait for our troops to get into position here. And importantly, because world tension is still relatively low at 23%, no other country should really get involved in this. They don't have any allies, so we should be fine to just declare war. All right, now we're at war, and now battle can begin. So what we're going to do first is we're going to see if we can exploit some early weaknesses here by exploiting this gap in their front lines. You can see they're launching attacks against me. Green bubbles mean the computer expects us to win these battles, and red means the computer expects us to lose those battles. Now, that can change by other factors, but in general, that's a pretty good guideline. So if you're at war and you see a bunch of red on your front line, that could be a problem. But yeah, if we click on this, we can see, so if you highlight over this, they estimate that we will win the battle in less than a day. So in battle, you can see the offenders are attacking us, and we're defending. So they have their, because we're infantry, we use soft attack. Harder divisions, which are divisions that have like mechanized and tanks in them, they're only susceptible to hard attack, which you can see here. So you see our divisions have very little hard attack, but that's not doing much. But so it's the soft attack that's important. So you can see we've got like about comparable soft attack, but the difference is they have to basically block attacks using their breakthrough. How many enemy attacks you can attempt to avoid while on the offensive. Whereas since we're defending, we use our defense. Infantry tend to have high defense but low breakthrough, which means that it can be really rough for infantry attacking. Generally, an infantry unit, all other things being equal, an infantry unit attacking a defending infantry unit is going to take a lot more casualties, and it's probably going to lose. Alright, so we managed to push in. Notice we're starting to take a little bit of supply issue. That's because if we look at the supply map mode, these are our supply hubs, and this is how supply is flowing. We can try and do things to increase our supply distribution. So if we go here, we can try and motorize the supply hub, and this should hopefully help a little bit of supply. Yeah, a little bit of supply reach from further away and help out our supply issue some. But now we're using trucks because of we're doing that, which is why we decided to build trucks. So now we're going to manually launch some attacks. I was hoping to trap that guy in multiple combat, but that's okay. And we'll just keep exploiting this gap in the front line in the meantime. We click on the war screen, we can see the overall number of casualties we've sustained. So we've taken about 600 casualties, they've taken about 1,500. So we're doing pretty nicely. We can go ahead and try and nab Mosul, which would be nice. If we nab Mosul and Erbil, these have most of the victory points, so this should give us access to the state's factories. Right now, we can't see the factories in the state. But if we actually take Mosul... Yeah, and now you can see, now we actually have to garrison the state, but now we actually have access to this military factory here. Or, well, we would have access to it if we had compliance, but we don't. Also, speaking of which, we go to occupied territory, see what our default compliance law is. In general, I recommend civilian oversight, because you can see we get negative compliance gain, despite having lower resistance. In general, you want to be gaining compliance because that's what's actually going to let you access the factories and resources in a state. I mean, with a higher conscription law, or with a higher garrison law, like a more authoritarian garrison law, like you can actually get more resources out of the state and or forced factories out of the state. But you're generally going to get less than you would get with high compliance, and you're going to be dealing with resistance, which can be rough. So in general, I think building compliance is generally the better strategy, but that's just me. So unfortunately, you can see here, if we look at the supply map mode, we don't have a connection with Mosul on our supply hub, so we can't actually move supply because supply flows from our capital. So what we could do, and what I'll do actually just for the sake of it, is we can build a railroad. Just for the sake of it, we'll build a railroad connecting this city up here, even though that city doesn't actually have a supply hub. And then we'll build a railroad, trying to avoid the front line some, and build a railroad connecting there. And then once these railroads finish, we should get a supply hub connection. Now it is worth noting, we can actually derive a little bit of supply from the population of the state. So you can see from population there is an infrastructure, there's 0.6 and 0.04 supply available. So that's how these troops are actually in supply when they weren't in supply before, despite us not actually having a railroad connection to the supply hub in Mosul. Capturing supply hubs is very valuable. Supply hubs are pretty expensive to build. Yeah, they cost $20,000 by comparison of civilian factories, $10,000 production. Well, 10,800. So supply hubs are pretty expensive, so you typically don't want to build them if you can avoid it. We'll go ahead and have more of these guys attack. The reason why we want to attack from multiple directions is if we actually look at this, the combat width, which is the number, determines how many of our divisions. Each division has a combat width. If we click on this guy, we can see they use 12 combat width. So the number of divisions that can participate in a combat is dictated by the combat width. Since we're attacking from additional directions, that's how we have more combat width, which lets us get more divisions in order to attack him. Another thing you can do is if you want to stop a division, if you say we want to move from Mosul into here to help take more territory, what we can do is we can attack this division, and that stops his movement, which lets our division, which will hopefully let our division move in. That's just a really nice like microing thing that can be really, really useful. Right now, we don't really need political power, and none of this stuff really gives us... these are all like research bonuses, which, don't get me wrong, are nice, but not super important for us right now. So let's go and get secret weapons. What secret weapons will give us are bonuses to like electronics and things like that, which we can use to research like computational tech and nuclear theory, which will give us more research bonuses, which is great. Let's see if we can actually sneak around and maybe take Baghdad from them. Taking a country's capital doesn't guarantee they capitulate, but typically their capital's worth a lot of victory points, and once a nation loses enough victory points, they will capitulate. So Iraq currently has 72% of their victory points, so they'll capitulate when they have 20% or less. Since I'm only fighting Iraq, once they capitulate, the war will end, and I'll get to annex them or puppet them or whatever I want to do. There's some free dockyards now. Right now we only have convoys, so we'll just build some convoys. Once again, as convoys, like I mentioned, you use those for moving supply and moving supply, moving troops. It's just, and trade. It's just nice in general. So having convoys is, you can never have too many convoys, let me put it that way. These guys, now you'll see, if we actually look at a little bit more detail, you can see the river here. You can see that one of our guys, we're taking a river crossing penalty because we're attacking across a river. So this unit's going to do less damage, and they're going to have less breakthrough, which means they're going to take more damage from the enemy. So attacking over rivers can be rough. You can build things. Oh, he actually does have an air force. You can do things like get Marines and other things to try and help with crossing rivers and stuff, or the same thing with amphibious invasions, but it's something to keep in mind. Oof, and we actually got forced out of a province there. We actually lost battle. Looks like we might get forced out of here also. This is the downside of stretching our front line. So let's deploy some more troops and get some more troops into the front line. You can see the experience of our divisions are starting to go up. Looks like they, well, they're about to strengthen their front line, so we'll just push here. And again, this is a real simple war. A lot of early wars are like this, where, especially when you're like lesser, not heavily industrialized nations, it's just a lot of infantry throwing themselves at each other. These guys, you can see, they're mountaineers, so they're probably getting a little bit of a bonus from the terrain, whereas we're probably getting, we're getting a malus from the terrain attacking into mountains. You can see down here, this is how you get unlock special forces, researching those techs. Overall, though, I think we will go try and get some heavy tanks into our, work on getting some heavy tanks, although the war will probably be over before we can really deploy some heavy tanks, but we'll just keep trying to nab more territory. One nice thing, especially when you're playing against the AI, is just nabbing territory usually messes with their front lines. And also, if you just take territory from them, they just have less area to maneuver, which is also just helpful in general. Alright, we're having a bit of a tough time. This guy's free, though, so we can also send this guy into attack. And we can, if you've got a combat going, you can right-click, and then the unit will attack, and then they'll try to move once the battle ends. If we control right-click on this combat, what'll happen is they'll support. So they'll aid in attacking the enemy unit, but they won't actually move into the province once the battle ends. And they just decided to leave that area undefended. They just leave Baghdad open. Might be able to swoop in and grab Baghdad, actually. And if you right-click and the troop will take the automatic path, if we shift right-click, we can create a custom path for our units to follow. If we actually click in, so you can see for a brief second there, they were in the reserves, so they weren't actively participating in the combat, and that's where that reinforce rate I mentioned earlier comes in. If we do it again, you can see that this guy's sitting in the reserves and is waiting to get, and now he reinforced the combat. So that's what reinforce rate means. It doesn't actually have anything to do with refilling the equipment in the division. It has to do with the divisions moving out of the reserves and into the active combat. If you're exceeding combat width, then your divisions will just sit in the reserves and never reinforce, really. You actually see right here, this guy's taking an immultiple combat penalty. This is because he's attacking while simultaneously being attacked here. So what we'll do is we'll actually go ahead and cancel that because he's going to take extra damage from that. Okay, unfortunately our attempt to stall into Baghdad didn't really work out too well, but that's okay, we'll just keep pushing. Oh wow, that guy's taking a lot of damage. Hey, we managed to move in there. We'll try and manually reinforce. If we take this area, so this is another supply. Oh, actually, is our railroad finished? Almost, not quite. So unfortunately, we are still not having supply flow into Mosul yet. But one of the things we could do is go ahead and try and take this supply hub from them, which should hopefully give these guys supply issues. We can also advance. You see the AI, they keep moving their troops around because they're having a lot of difficulty. They're trying to manage a front line where they don't have enough troops to cover the front line. So they keep having to try and prioritize where they move their troops and move them around in reaction to the front line changing. So, we can just exploit those gaps whenever they pop up. What we can do, actually, is we can do the bread and butter of Hearts of Iron 4. We can try and separate these guys from their main force down. Oh, we can see we've got an infantry equipment deficit, so what we'll do is we'll actually cancel these productions and make sure all our equipment's going to reinforcing our troops that are already in the field. You see, this guy, he's... well, this guy not getting them in multiple combat. Sometimes it can be a little finicky whether or not the AI gets the in multiple combat, or whether or not you get the in multiple combat penalty, which can be unfortunate. Go ahead and have these guys attack. Now, I think what we're going to do is these guys are actually going to get, I think this counts as a major river crossing. Yeah, so it does say major river crossing, but you'll notice the penalty here is worse. This is minus 60%, whereas for this little river here, I believe it was minus 30%. So again, another thing to keep in mind. And we didn't have enough troops to garrison the front line, so they managed to push us out. Oh well. We also don't have to be doing this. We could have used the offensive line order we drew earlier, but in general, for these sorts of combats, I find it can be better to micromanage things. We'll really push on trying to take Baghdad. Once Baghdad falls, they should be pretty close to capitulating. We might need to also take Basra, though. Okay, now we now have the railroad connection, so you can see supply can now flow from our capital in Tehran to Mosul. And that'll help keep our troops supplied. And see, some of our troops are having a little bit of supply issues, so we can try fully motorizing that supply depot, and that helps the supply situation out a little bit. Go ahead and try and attack and take Karbala, because it's worth victory points. Although it's only worth 1 victory point. Basra is probably worth 5, yeah. So we'll probably take Basra, taking Basra at least to capitulate Iraq. Go ahead and queue up more civilian factories to be built later. Oh, we actually have a 100% area we can build some civilian military factories in. Draft dodging. So this can happen when you're at, I forget if it's low stability or low support that does it. Generally, you want to take these bottom ones to try and get the draft reform, even though it does cost a lot of political power. But fortunately, we don't super need political power right now. Got secret weapons. Now we'll do some army effort, try and upgrade our land doctrine some. So we go to the officer corps, we can see our doctrine, and these doctrine can give us some pretty nice bonuses. I think we'll go grand battle plan since we're a primarily infantry-based army. Not that we're going to get very far into this. I think that the war should hopefully be over soon. Looks like Baghdad's about to fall if they don't reinforce it. Nope. Alright, so we took Baghdad, so now we can see they are 85% towards capitulation. So yeah, if Basra falls, they should definitely yield. I mean, they might yield if Karbala is taken, but I'm doubtful. Try and lock these troops up as we concentrate to try and break these guys down here. You can see now we have a lot of reserves, but we have a lot of combat with, so they'll slowly pop in, deal more damage, and hopefully we take Karbala. And nope, not quite. So Najaf actually might do it if we take that. Or yeah, Najaf. I am not familiar. HOI4 will have you pronouncing a lot of names you're not familiar with, in a lot of languages you're not familiar with. Cancel that. We'll wait, see if we can get our troops, let our troops organization. So for troops, they've got organization and strength. If you've ever played a previous Paradox game, organization is pretty analogous to, like, say, morale in Europa Universalis. And that's basically like your troops' willingness to keep fighting and how well organized they are to be a cohesive fighting unit. Strength is how much, like, equipment and manpower they actually have. So yeah. So those are some things to keep in mind. You can see our troops were starting to get low strength just because we've got a deficit of infantry equipment. So that's another reason we can stall for a little bit and try and let our infantry equipment refill some. I hope we're not consuming too much equipment from our occupations. Doesn't seem to be that much. We've only lost a little bit of equipment, little bit of equipment because of resistance. So, all right, let's try. Select two of these guys, these guys, these guys. These guys will support, and this guy will support, and there should be a lot of guys attacking. Should hopefully break through this division. I'm wondering, yeah, so he's got the plus 25% experience bonus, whereas a lot of our troops are just trained. We haven't really gotten a lot of our troops upgraded yet. So that's why these guys can be tougher to break. Also, is not only are they doing, we got the same event again. Sometimes that just happens. We're almost through. Yep, their organization was lost, and they're actually pulling troops out of Basra, which is an interesting choice, because now we can focus on just taking Basra, because we know that the war ends if we take it. And because we know that, we can also direct additional troops into the combat, use as much of combat width as possible, attack these guys as much as possible. You can see their orgs ticking down as they get dealt all the attacks from our divisions. Are these guys well trained as well? Yep, they are well trained as well. Experienced, I should say. Get more production efficiency, and I think the war is over. And we can go ahead and check really quick. Yep, 100% towards capitulation, so I believe they won't capitulate until the day actually rolls over. Yep. And now we're in the peace conference. Because we're the only ones in the peace conference, we can make all the demands. We could separate puppets out of Iraq, like Satellite Kurdistan and then Puppet Iraq itself. But I think we're interested in just taking everything for ourselves. And then we seize all the equipment that Iraq had before. And yeah, now you can see we've got resistance that we're going to have to deal with. But overall, it's not too bad. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you for watching. Hope this was helpful. There's still a lot more stuff to cover with planes and tanks and all that stuff. But hopefully if you're interested in doing a Hearts of Iron 4 multiplayer game with your friends or something, you know enough of the basics to just sort of get by and not immediately get capitulated. See ya.